The college football Heisman finalists have officially been announced. Today we're going to go over all 4 of them and our thoughts on who could possibly be the front runner of the Heisman Trophy. Starting off with Justin Fields. Now Fields on this season, 62.4% passing percentage versus AP top 25 teams. That's important. We'll bring it up more later, but he didn't have the gaudy passing numbers that these other quarterbacks do have on this list this year. Only 2,900. Now, the last person to go out there and win the Heisman with under 3,000 passing yards was Cam Newton. The difference, though, Cam Newton, obviously known for his running game as well, made a big difference there. But the thing with, you bring up for Justin Fields, the main excuse you'll hear behind this is the fact that Ohio State, he would have had the better yards, but they was blowing teams out every single game. They didn't need Justin Fields in the second half. They didn't need him in the fourth quarter. They didn't need those passing yards that would make his passing yards more inflated, like you've seen from Jalen Huts, like you've seen from Joe Burow, who went out there and had these high scoring 45, 47 games consistently throughout the year. That's obviously going to inflate those stats. Now you can obviously go down the same route and say, well, he wasn't tested like those guys was then. Who knows how he would have fared in that second half? Ifs and buts. You can't just assume he would have had 4,500, 5,000 passing yards or 3,800 passing yards just because he didn't play those games, right? You can't assume that this was going to happen based on the fact that he didn't play. So that argument makes a lot of sense. But if you're going to go and play the ifs and buts games like that, where you say, well, the second half doesn't mean as much, then we can go down the road of the fact that this guy had 50 total touchdowns this season, 40 touchdown passes, and 1 interception. You know, the last time a Heisman Trophy winner threw 1 interception all season, I'll give you a clue, it never happened. One of the most astonishing stat lines you'll see from a quarterback, 40 touchdowns to 1 INT as a ratio. I think that's the front running candidate as to why he would be a possible Heisman winner here. You look straight at that number right there. You look straight at the fact that when his number was called, when they did need him against Michigan, when they did need him against Wisconsin, he came up big, he played big, and you can go back and look and say that's the reason his passing percentage was lower than these other guys on the list, is the fact that he didn't force passes where he didn't need force. He didn't take those chances. He made the smart decision. Instead of turning the ball over, throwing the ball to the other team, he threw it away or he took the sack. Then we have Jalen Hurts, a interesting one on the list nonetheless. 3,634 passing yards on a season, 32 pass TDs, 7 INTs. Not the greatest TD to passing compared to the other 2 quarterbacks on this list, but he brought a different dynamic to the offense that these other 2 quarterbacks did. And that was the run game. 1,255 rush yards this season, 10 rush TDs, and it was 42 total touchdowns on the season. The only thing with Jalen Hurts here is he was the only Heisman player or player on this Heisman list to lose, which does somewhat get accounted for how you play in those tight games, how you perform. You go undefeated compared to losing that one game. But I do think, the thing with Jalen Hurts, it's hard to compare him to these other 2 quarterbacks because he brings a different dynamic to the game. These other guys are primarily pocket passers. Hurts brings that different dynamic to an offense where he's not only going to beat you with his pass game, but he's going to beat you with his run game. Then you have another Ohio State Buckeye in Chase Young. 20 tackle for losses this year, 16.5 sacks, and he missed those 2 games. If it wasn't for those 2 games, this guy was on pace to have a record-breaking season. If it wasn't for those 2 games, you could probably say he was a very, 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 very good candidate for the Heisman Trophy and being the winner, and very arguably so. But those 2 games happened, he came back, and he wasn't the same. Now, granted, it could be the fact that he didn't play 2 games. It could be the fact that those 2 teams, Michigan and Wisconsin, did their best to go out there and shut him down. Regardless of what the reason was, he wasn't the same player at the end of the day in crunch time when you need that difference maker player, which is what you consider the Heisman finalist, right? You look at him and say he's going to be that reason you win games. He wasn't that closer type of player these last 2 games for Ohio State, and I think that's going to hurt his chances here. And finally, you have Joe Burow. I think Joe Burrow is the front-running candidate here. I think he's got the best. I mean, you just look at the guy's stats. Top 25 teams this year when he played against them, he threw for 78.6%. He was a 78% passer on the entire season. You compare that to Justin Fields is 62.1. Jalen Hurts is 69.1. That is how ridiculously high of a passing percentage this guy had this year. It was unheard of. It was crazy. 48 touchdowns, 6 INTs, 4,700 passing yards on the season, only threw for under 300 yards twice all season. And we brought up earlier, the Jalen Hurts thing being a different type of dynamic player. Burrow wasn't that running type quarterback. He had 289 rushing yards on the season, which for a college football quarterback really is not a lot at all. But that just goes out there and shows how good of a quarterback he was. These teams knew he was passing the ball. He was not a threat on the ground, and they still could not stop him the entire season, knowing that's all they had to worry about was stopping him on the pass game, and he still still carved up offense after offense after offense after offense. There wasn't a team that had an answer for him all season. With Joe Burrow, there was no ifs and buts. There wasn't no if he played here or if he did this. No, he did it all season. He did a great job at it. And I think it's hard to take the Heisman away from him right now. He's playing on a #1 ranked team in the country, team that hasn't lost all season. We just brought it up. The absolutely gaudy numbers this guy put up this season. He was the best player in college football, I think.